Hello and welcome to another episode of Minnesota Liberty Podcast, sponsored by the Libertarian Party of Minnesota. I am one of your hosts, Rebecca Whiting, and TJ Hawthorne, our other host. And you're down in you're in St. Paul, right?
North St. Paul. Yep.
And I'm in Bemidji. It was 57 degrees today in Bemidji. What was the temperature down in St. Paul?
Yeah, actually, 57 was what I checked last. That it was about 6 o'clock.
You guys probably don't have snow.
Oh no.
We're still working through our piles of snow.
Really? Oh man, that stinks.
Yeah, and it snowed yesterday. It snowed yesterday for long enough and hard enough that there was a little bit of accumulation on the ground.
Oh really?
So winter's not over.
I'm not sure you never can count it out.
No, not this far north.
Especially that far north.
What
do we want to talk about today, Rebecca?
Yeah, so today we're going to talk about the Tucker Carlson interview with I forgot his name. What's his name? Representative
Weldon. Oh boy, yeah, I forgot his first name
Kurt
too.
Weldon. Congressman Kurt Weldon, who is a congressman for many years, and he was a congressman through 9/11, Afghanistan, Iraq, all of those things. And from all accounts, from what I can tell, it was just, like the kind of guy you want, in office. Honest, hardworking, willing to stand for the truth. And then he paid for it. And so now it's been 20 years or so. And he did this interview with Tucker Carlson, coming clean on a lot of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And if you haven't seen the interview, you absolutely should go watch it, because it was an interview talking about 9/11 stuff. Where are you at 9/11? Where were you at before you watched this? Let's put that this way.
Oh, where was I at?
Yeah, were you like the kind of person that questioned 9/11? Were you
absolutely? Yeah, this was just more like, great. I hope this goes mainstream and tells everybody about the truth. He had more information and more solid things, as far as his firsthand accounts.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, and so it was really enthralling, I think is the right word, to listen to this guy and his passion about it. And you wonder how many other folks have just been waiting to speak up because afraid of things that might stop them from breathing anymore, I guess. That I don't even know how to explain it. The stuff where they talk about suicides and shooting yourself twice in the head and things like that, where when they're trying to whistleblow about certain folks, and all this stuff is wrapped up into that, man. But this guy's brave enough to say the truth.
Heavy interview.
Yeah.
I mean, if you haven't watched it yet, absolutely. It's about an hour and a half long. But I caught myself at several points being like, I should pull out paper and start taking notes. You know what I mean? Because there were names, there were dates, there were places. The facts were just kind of laid out. And I talked to a friend that was just like, oh, well, I don't know. I'm not sure if I could trust this guy. Why is he just bringing all this information out now? But there were several points in the interview where Congressman Kurt Weldon was like getting excited, and you could hear his voice was getting louder. He was like on the he was knocking over things on the table.
Well, the thing is how impacted he was. He had a life trajectory of this, and then just stopped right like this, and then it got his daughter involved. Right, that was the whole thing. It's like, hey, all right, F you, I'm done.
But also, like, he essentially held the keys and had the information prior to 9/11 that could have stopped 9/11 if anybody had taken that information, and he tried to pass it off to people. That's what this interview is about. Like, he had the position, he had the knowledge, he had the fortitude, like to know what to do with this kind of information. He was the kind of guy people should have listened to. He was in involved in the groups where he could get intel that other groups couldn't get, and he was able to pull
Yeah.
all together and tried multiple times to warn our government about 9/11 and what could end up happening. And obviously, probably there's no way he could have known it went down the way it did go down. You know what I mean? Like, but that there was things going on that people should have been paying attention to, and he was shot down every single time. Not just shot down, but the information was taken, and like they were just like, all right, well, we're just not gonna shut the door in his face every single time.
Mm-hmm.
And if I had been in his position back then, especially now having the ability to see what has happened for the last 20 years, the wars, Iraq, Afghanistan, 9/11, the Patriot Act, the all of these things, right? All of these things come together, and he ties it all together. He was literally holding everything that could have made that stop, but that's not what they wanted. They didn't want it to stop, and that weight, that burden has to be very heavy on him. And I think that you can see that in the interview with his body language. He needs to unload this.
Yeah,
regardless of what comes next.
I could tell that, and I was listening to it. I wasn't even watching it. I listened to podcasts, and so when I could hear his enthusiasm and his passion when he was talking about it. And I don't want to always get carried away with folks like that, especially telling these truths. I tend to believe them because there seems to be all kinds of logic and reasoning behind everything that they're saying, you know what I mean? And just not 100% proof of, okay, he said there were tapes of the firefighter that got up to floor 76, said, oh yeah, there's a fire here and we can handle it. And then next thing you know, it just comes straight down. Like, and man, I tell you what, the day one, when I sat and watched it, when you were first asking where I was at, well, yeah, I just got out of boot camp and Navy boot camp, and I'm sitting there watching it in my A school little TV. When they came straight down, I thought right away, I was like, well, that sure looks like it was on purpose. Like, oh, don't boot. The only way a building comes straight down like that is if it's on purpose, like you actually imploding it. And so this kind of stuff really kind of solidifies that, kind of the evidence that he says that he's seen or he's heard recordings. So, who gets to get rid of that kind of stuff? I don't know how that gets covered up too, because then we just look like crazies. If we got no hard evidence, those guys just tell us we're crazies. And so it'd be really nice to have some hard evidence that we can say, in the sentiment, I think everybody who wouldn't want to know some truth, hey, we're all ready for a little bit more red pills, but we don't. This is quite a big bottle of red pills that people start going down, and
yeah, this is but this could very easily turn into black pills.
Oh,
this is
absolutely. Of a lot of folks that you might have thought you liked, right? That was big time awakening that got me into the Libertarian Party, no doubt, was to say, oh, it just awake. Oh, they did. Oh, okay. So nobody's trusted in any of that shit.
And even if, let's say, even if there is hard evidence, and he says there's hard evidence, there's the interviews of the people who were there, there's all these things that come together, but they're in charge of the media, and he talks about this, how the media is being told what to say. The media, the Justice Department, every level of government, every single level of government, top to bottom.
Man,
what do you do when the media is in charge of spreading the propaganda that they are essentially they're a mouthpiece of the government, and the government has this agenda. It's not just to run a country and to keep us safe and make sure the roads are working the way they're supposed to, right? It's not just that. This is so insidious that how do you come out of seeing it all for what it actually is without just being fully black-pilled at the end of it?
I
Because
don't know.
we're just one, I'm just one person and you're just one person. And let's say we're ever in a position to be able to do something to change this, knowing the complex
The implications and the ramifications of afterwards of what does happen when a black pill like that does sweep across the nation, or
or no, just
yeah,
like us, you like us individually, myself, you, let's say just, we're like, hey, we're in this situation. We need to stand for the truth and stand against an unjust government, a government acting in bad faith in every aspect of the word. What can you do is just one person here and one person here. And how easy
I
is
think
it for
exactly
them?
what
Because
we're
they
doing.
also have a long history, like we are talking about, like of just suiciding people. So
Yeah.
it's
Well, I think keep doing what we're doing, because the only way we are successful is through grassroots, real people following us and doing whatever. And if they feel like we're a threat, then by that time we're gonna have enough folks. I don't know. I don't know how to think about it like that. Where it is. I
yeah,
think we just keep doing what we're doing and keep being consistent in who we are. And the House of Cards is exactly that. Shit, that TV show was so spot on how fragile that shit can be to come down on any one of those folks. I truly believe it. That you know, how about um I don't know why Tiger Woods is the first one to come to mind, because it's nothing like this, but this, hey, there's a victim, and then the Me Too. Okay, it was like the Me Too freaking dominoes falling when one victim says, "Oh," and then everybody else says, "I was too." Um, I hope maybe it latches on like that, as far as, hey, there's some information and this guy's really putting it out and then saying, hey, okay, yeah, I got this too. Okay, yeah, I got this too. Because this those folks know that if they have that kind of information, then they know what kind of danger they could be in if they leaked the stuff.
well, what we need are people that see it for the reality of what it is and choose to put truth and action before their own security. Really, that's what it comes down to. And then I guess we should pause and say hello to our FBI agents while we're watching this, and
How
make
does
sure
that
that
work if we're not even monetized, right? So can they still really cancel us and shut us down on
I
that
don't know. I'm sure
channel?
they could. I mean, you can pull the plug on anything, but
Yeah, of
we're
course.
talking about peaceful non-aggression
Truth.
means of standing against an unjust government. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Absolutely.
Every once
Yeah.
in a while, I walk by my Alexa device and I'm like, I love the Democrat Party, just throw it off.
Yeah,
Anyways, yeah, surround yourself with people that can be, that you trust, that are willing to stand for truth in hard times. Because where does this, I think all human history, all civilizations always have to come to this, like this choke point in history where, the good versus the evil, there's a conflict and eventually there's a confrontation. You know what I mean? And that's going to happen to everybody eventually, whether it's in our time or kids' times, or eventually all human history. It just happens over and over again. So,
well, yeah, like you said, it hopefully there's peace, but the boiling point, man, when you start talking about that, my mind started going to a lot of other things that I've heard recently about biblical stuff, you know, and I'm not really a Christian type folk. I guess Christian type. I'm just not a church goer, you know, but I'm really interested in a lot of the stuff that the stories that are told and the things that are, I don't know. I guess here's the thing. I don't know if we want to go on this tangent. Never mind.
Yeah.
I don't want. I really was about to
Political.
take a left turn, but I want to stay on the topic of the truth that's coming out. You know, there's a lot of the other truths as far as Pearl Harbor and the whole Vietnam War it's beginning and stuff like that. And
Or that Vietnam was justified by a red flag event.
exactly.
It wasn't even real. They know that now. And how many thousands of people, troops died in Vietnam?
So many,
Fighting for
and the lives
false flag. That's essentially what happened.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, after this interview with Tucker Carlson and oh shoot, I forgot his name again.
Weldon.
Yeah.
Kurt Weldon.
Yep, Kurt Weldon. That means that Afghanistan was a false flag. And I guess I don't know the breakdown of Afghanistan versus Iraq. I know that there was about 7,000, a little over 7,000 troops killed between Iraq and Afghanistan. And I'm assuming that Iraq was hit harder than Afghanistan. But this was as a stepping point, you know, that going into Afghanistan after 9/11 was a stepping stone for Iraq, the Arab Spring, like all of these events. It wasn't just Iraq and Afghanistan. It was dictator after dictator. Yeah, I mean, bad guys, but should we have done what we did? I mean, you know,
7 countries in 5 years. Wasn't that the plan? I think that Dave Smith talks about it all the time. I wish I knew the names of the guys, but
yes. And then, I mean, all of these things happened, and we have the last, since 2001, 24 years since then. And nothing's the same as it was in the Middle East back then.
Or here.
Yeah. Well, because you can't travel like you used to be able to. You can't, you know, the surveillance state.
Oh, just comply. Real ID. Just get your damn real ID and comply. Well, how hard is it? Gosh, who cares?
I'm not getting a real ID. Are you?
Good. I've already got it.
That one? Yeah. You do a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm one of those that, yeah, I'll whatever. I'll go along with the shit.
I think on this interview, the thing that actually was probably the most shocking to me was early on. It was probably in the first 15 to 20 minutes of the interview. And he talks about how Representative Kurt Weldon talks about he had his own intel guys that were feeding him information. And his own intel guys that was separate from the CIA. And his own intel guys were saying, well, Osama bin Laden is here, or Osama bin Laden is here. You know where Osama bin Laden never was? Afghanistan.
Yeah.
So we went to Afghanistan to fight a war to get Osama bin Laden, and he was never actually in the country.
Never there.
He was in Iran. And that's part of the interview. So he was in Iran the whole time. We didn't attack Iran. We attacked Afghanistan. And I think that this is important to note is, and I don't remember what he said about this, but there was a lot of information in that interview. I would need to sit down and listen to it probably a couple of times to really be able to absorb everything that he was talking about. But my ex-husband at the time, because I was in the Army already in 2001, like you, I had just finished my training. I'd finished my training for AIT in the Army, my advanced training, in July of 2001. And I remember seeing, you know, the towers come down and just being like, holy this is it. You know, like watching that come down, being like, this is, you know, as you know, probably as in the Navy too, you know, as a soldier already, you kind of know what that means for you personally. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, it was a time busy because
Um,
we were all in school still. Like I said, still in training and still had no real idea where the hell where I was going to go until after I graduated this school. Then I would have orders to do something. So now it was like, oh, who knows what the hell? And
right.
by the
Well,
time
that's
I was by the time I was out of school, it's already kind of like, okay, here's the what we're. I don't know if it was all decided. It really wasn't a big deal, other than all the bases were more secure. No, nothing in my life really changed until well, I
well, you
got
used to
to
be able to just drive on to a military base. Prior to 9/11,
right.
you could just drive on. And after
Yep.
9/11 happened, that you couldn't drive on anymore. But my ex-husband, and we were dating at the time. We weren't married yet. But we got married shortly after this. 9/11 just kind of made everything feel more real and more serious. You know what I mean? And so we got married. But he uh, he was in the Third Ranger Battalion at Fort Benning, Georgia, on 9/11, and they were actually the way that Ranger battalions work is that they rotate through RF1, RF2, RF3. RF1 means like if something happens that you're just like out the door. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so they were on RF1 when 9/11 happened. And then they were supposed to go, and they weren't going to Afghanistan. They were going to Oman, which is, I'm not even sure. I'm not even sure I could find Oman on a map like right now if I just looked at it. But it's
Right
not
on
too
the
far
end
from
of the
Afghanistan.
peninsula there with Yemen.
Okay, but that's where they went, was Oman. And then the first time they tried to go, they had 9/11 happens. They're in RF1, and they're given orders to go to Oman, and that's basically where they used as like a staging ground to for Afghanistan. But the first time they tried to do that, somebody leaked it to the press, basically, that they were leaving to go to to Oman for after 9/11, and so they scrapped the whole mission. Because somebody leaked it to the press, and it was supposed to be, secret. Like nobody knows when the Ranger Battalion's leaving. So
Yeah, well, any of that kind of OPSEC, especially those guys. Yeah.
yeah, and so then they ended up leaving a little while later. Um, and at the time, we had like a code word. Like if he was going to be leaving on RF1 and was going to go someplace, like he could get on the phone and just be like, say the code word. And I knew what that meant. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, but they jumped in. So they went to Oman, and it was actually a month later. So 9/11 happens. They leave actually from the United States October 11th or around there. And they go to Oman, but they go from Oman to Afghanistan, and they jump into Kandahar. But SF is already on the ground. Like they've got media and special forces and everything. They jumped in because that's kind of a big deal, doing a combat jump. When you're a Ranger battalion, you've got airborne wings. But there was already, it was all for show.
Yeah.
They were only there a couple of months before they went home. But a couple of months of no contact, not knowing where they were going to be going. So, but what I mean is like, when they jumped into Kandahar and SF already be there, the media already being there on the ground, they already knew, like it was planned, it was just
Yeah.
all.
Well, I agree. And I think the same thing happened, a year or two later in Iraq. Like we already had folks. One of my good friends was a Marine that volunteered for anything they would send him to. So there was some forward deployment of something, not really associated with his engine mechanic training.
Mhm.
And he's driving around in Iraq. I'm not really sure. He could tell me, he has told me, but in a totally skinned out Humvee. No armor, no doors. You know what I mean? There's
Yeah.
nothing Humvee cruising around in 2002, 2003 before we go and do the shock all before all this, and he's having tea and having all this good stuff with all these people in Iraq, and then whatever they were setting up for the propaganda and all that other crap that they then told us that the kids were in incubators or babies, Saddam was doing this and that, and who knows, man. I mean, if you really were able to go back and think of all the propaganda that we were fed over those years and over that time, like you said, and then the guy Kurt Weldon said bin Laden was here the whole time, and every time I'd say something and bring it up into a meeting, CIA would say, "Oh, well, we got that same word, but we can never confirm or deny," and that was the response he got every time. And
And they
so,
knew.
yeah,
They knew.
of course they knew, and he knew, and he's like, "Okay, what do I do about it?" Like,
They were just, the CIA just feeds the elected representatives. That ultimately, the way it's supposed to work is that they're the ones that should be getting the correct information, because we should not be going to war without a congressional approval for war. As the way the law is written, that's literally how it's written, right? And so if the CIA is not feeding correct information and correct, intel to the elected representatives making these decisions, like they're the ones that are supposed to be. So if they're not getting the correct information because the CIA is like, well, we're just not going to tell you. And if Representative Kurt Weldon hadn't had his own people giving him the actual information, and everybody else is relying on the CIA, the CIA is not, the CIA has their own agenda. They are not friends of the people.
exactly.
They absolutely will sacrifice any of us for
their own safety. And same with the FBI.
They're serving.
Same with the FBI. There's some guys I listen to, Expendables, I think they call themselves, or suspendables. They've been permanently suspended from the FBI, and or indefinitely, whatever you want to call it. And this guy talks about that like it's Skynet, the Terminator AI, where it's gotta maintain itself.
I've never actually seen Terminator.
well, just think of anything that needs to keep itself alive, right? This was talked about a lot with the virus, as far as how does it propagate itself, but you can't kill all its hosts, or else it won't move on, right? So a virus evolves by getting whatever, but an institution like any government institution, really, if you look at it, this is exactly how they keep getting bloated. They have to keep making themselves worthy of existence. And so you get the summer of love, and you get freaking wars and all this other stuff. You get false intelligence, and that's what they do so that they can keep justifying themselves, and all these Times Square bombing, and who knows, remember, I've never even looked harder, but think about the underwear bomber or the shoe bomber and all this other shit that was, man, I tell you what,
and now everybody has to take off their shoes before they get on an airplane.
Yeah, I think I said this before on this podcast. I flew around for like a year with a bottle of fake pee, because I thought I had to do a drug test at this one job site one day. So I got the fake pee and I held on to it, and then I had it in a perfect spot in my laptop bag. And no 3 ounces, none of this, none of that. And this pee went through that thing all the time, like 100 times at least through the scanner, and nobody said anything. And there was this fluid. It was just about a little fake pee.
Why?
And
why?
Why what?
Why would you? Why?
Well, so there is a story behind it, but I mean, why not? Why would I pee and cause a ruckus, and somebody say, you have THC in your pee? Back then, I was in the closet. Now I don't give a shit. Now pretty much everybody I know knows that I smoke, but that's fine. It's not like it doesn't define me. It doesn't.
I know, but why? It's just. Anyways, certain things you probably shouldn't say on air.
Oh, I don't understand. I'm not really that worried about it, honestly.
Obviously.
That. So my point was, though, the scanners and all the bullshit, you know what I mean? It made me think that the underwear bomber, the shoe bomber, was likely set up. So they look what we did. Look what we did. We got to have more. You know what I mean? And they, how many things are complete setups? January 6th, October 7th, all kinds of these events that people have are like fearful things that make people afraid are 100% set up by these damn agencies and institutions like that. I
And
believe.
see, here's the thing is that no doubt on all of these things, like, people are dying. That's actually happening.
Yes.
But it's that the conflict has been pre-managed and has been created for the results. And like there, and this is another thing that they talk about in the interview is that the acceptable amount of casualties, or the acceptable what do they call it, the acceptable anyways, they were basically making a, well, we're gonna create this and we're gonna make this incident, and how many people is it okay that die from this,
Yeah.
so
It's
they're
got to
not
be an account.
actually trying to save any of us.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting to think then too of the other motives of where it's strictly just monetary. Not, I think there's a lot more than just selling bombs and stuff like that. But
Yeah, here I'm going to show this.
yeah, no, that's a great point, Bo.
70 billion in intel communities, and you cannot tell me that they did not know about October 7th.
Well, that's the thing too, is
whenever October 7th.
Whenever you ask, why is Israel our greatest ally? Well, they provide us with all this intelligence. Well, wait a second. And this then happened? No, it was red flag.
The intelligence community in Israel is very possibly could be greater than even our own intelligence community. Like I feel like that I don't have like actual numbers and facts and like that kind of stuff in front of me, but that there's quite a bit of shared information, shared training, shared skills. And if I was a country like Israel, would I be allowing the United States of America, who has a known history, by the way, of orchestrating wars, to know what your true capabilities were? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Would not do that. That just
I feel like
that you would be putting up a false, front to let people think they know what they think they know, and that there's actually something else going on. I mean, that's just the basis of all intelligence operations, right? Obviously.
Well, considering the percentage of Congress that have dual passports and half of them for Israel, it does seem very odd there too that what's Hawala? We're reading the kit. So, yeah. Now we get distracted, but no, I didn't know where we were talking about.
Yeah. Intelligence. So yeah, I just, what you see in the media, what they're allowed to say, especially understanding that the media is bought and sold, that is also controlled information. So, and that's, I don't know, probably the biggest thing I got out of the interview this afternoon. I like where Tucker Carlson has gone since he's kind of gotten out of the grips of like, Fox and that kind of stuff. I think what's that?
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you. I thought.
But and not but, like as in there's a counter argument, but that there is there's risk with that. If you're going to be a truth teller, if you're going to stand for something, if you're going to hold a hard line against an uncorrupt and unrighteous government entity, eventually they're going to come after you.
Yeah, I imagine
and that's probably the greatest example of that. You were telling the truth is that they intentionally are coming after you and targeting you and trying to make you stop.
Well, or make you out to be a lunatic, or make everybody you talk to out to be a lunatic, right? So this is
Right.
what they're doing with Joe Rogan also, is everybody that he talks to that has any truth about subjects pertinent to certain allies. Oh no, they're crazy. Oh no, they're not expert. Oh, they don't know what they're talking about. That's what I'm afraid of what's going to happen with this guy. I
Yeah.
feel like when this really comes out in the mainstream, because there's gonna be a lot more folks talking about this other than us, and it's going to be character shaming as far as this guy and his, well, what I saw as passion, as far as, fuck yeah, if you knew this truth and have been holding it in for this long because dang it, you wanted to live your life with your family for a while before, okay, let's do this. And now he sees an opening. I commend him for it. Like, heck yeah. And I hope he's a domino, or, something that tips on this house of cards, like I was saying before.
Mm-hmm.
That's they need to come down. And he really got passionate about that. I think I have it actually queued up in my thing of, as far as these $1 million companies are going down. I'm gonna see to it now.
Well, and I like how they're talking about the military-industrial complex. They're talking about the corporate interests of war, or the corporations that profit off of war, that have integrated essentially with our political system, the defense industry. I like how they're discussing all of that, and that we had, so this, I guess it wasn't this last weekend, it was weekend before last. There was complications. Mostly TJ was busy last week for the podcast, so we didn't get that done. But we just had the the Defend the Guard rally, and I guess we should probably recap that a little bit. Like,
let's get into that.
Yeah. So Defend the Guard rally was April 5th. So at this point, it's been a week and a half since we had it. You were there. I was there. We had a lot of people coming in and out of the Capitol building that we would not have normally had access to, because the hands-off rally that happened at the state capitol on the steps outside just happened to land on the same day that we were already there.
Yeah, that was
nuts. So here was it. I know there were like some people, and they were like, because I was getting messages like, oh, they're doing this protest at the rally the same day, and there were some people who were a little nervous about it. I thought it was an opportunity, right?
I did too. I thought we were gonna get a little more participation inside.
Well, we did get a lot more than I anticipated, I think. But there were people that were, coming in and out. They didn't come in and just sit and listen to the whole thing. So it's not like we drew big crowds inside that just sat and listened, right? And I think that some of the normal people that we would have had show up to, that have historically always shown up to our rallies, didn't come because of the rally that was happening outside and the protest outside. Because so when you're looking at the state capitol, from the steps, and there's a lot of steps. It's got a grand front entrance, right? And then there's this huge grassy area outside of that. But the aerial photos of that day, and these were people standing shoulder to shoulder, like that place was packed.
Yeah, it was.
And you could not see the grassy area at all. You couldn't see the grassy area, and they were spilling out into the road and past the road outside. I've heard that we're anywhere from 15 to 30,000 people there that day. I don't know. I can't look at a crowd and be like, oh, that definitely looks like 15,000 people. You know what I mean? I can't just eyeball it and tell you that that's 15,000. But that I've never seen so many people or been a part of like an event, and we weren't part of that event. It just happened to coincide the same day we were having our event. We didn't plan that. It's just how it happened.
No, and actually we planned ours before that was ever on the books, right? Because we had an option to be outside or inside when we were planning.
Well, and so this is what happened. We had our state convention the beginning of March. And when we were planning for this rally, we were like, well, we want to have this rally about 2 weeks after our state convention so that we can promote it at our state convention, get people excited, let them know what we're doing. Have them at the Capitol, 2 weeks after our state convention. And then when we got on the website to because you have to get approved to have your event at the state convention. You can't just show up and have a rally. So you have to go through like this approval process. And so when you're on the schedule trying to, put us in on a weekend, none of the weekends would work. Like the computer was like, well, this is taken up. This isn't free. You can't do it here. And there were multiple days we tried doing that. So out of frustration, I was just like trying every weekend, well, this weekend's not working. This weekend's not working. And it wasn't because on the calendar on the website that it was booked. Like it looked like the weekends were open, but everything that we tried wasn't open. The only one that worked was April 5th. And at the time I remember thinking, all right, you know what? It's a sign. We just need to be here on April 5th. And so I scheduled us for April 5th. Like, we're not arguing about this any longer. We're just going to do this April 5th. It's the only one that'll work. And then April 5th just happened to be the same day as the hands off rally or protest, or, I'm not even sure what they were doing.
I don't know either, but I read some things yesterday that really blew my mind as far as, because what got me going was how fast they organized that many people.
Yeah. All right. Right. Right.
I mean, that is kind of weird. And like, what is it? Are that many people really that mad that hands off what? Like, okay. I guess I haven't really looked too far into the Medicare, Medicaid things that they're claiming and all that stuff. I've heard all these different claims this way or that way. I don't even know how to really get the right information, because if you go to whitehouse.gov, well, that's the information you're going to get from this side. Whatever, I don't really know.
There was chatter online on social media that I saw of people that were going to the hands-off protest and saying that they knew about our rally inside and that they assumed that it was a Republican-led rally and that they were going to essentially disrupt it and have us thrown out. That's what they were saying, like online. And I saw that and I was just like, oh, this, like if they do have, and at this point, the Facebook event for that rally already had 2,000 people that were committed to going, right? So I knew there was going to be a lot of people. And then with the combination of people saying, oh, well, we're just going to come and disrupt a rally and get you thrown out, assuming that we were Republicans.
Yeah.
And so I reached out to all of like the Facebook pages, the social media accounts that I could find that were associated with that rally, and just left them and like, hey, I'm trying to get in touch with your head organizer. I need to talk to you guys about something. I'm planning the rally on the inside of the rotunda that day. Can you get somebody to reach out to me, please? And somebody did. And so I got to talk to him about what we were doing inside. And the thing that he wanted to know is if there were Democrat legislators supporting the Defend the Guard bill. And there are. Legitimately, there are 2 senators supporting the bill. And he was basically, that, like, for him, that was like, okay, you guys aren't the bad guys, when he like heard that, And so he was like, look, this is what I'm going to do. Just, we'll make an announcement that you guys are, doing your own thing, try to keep the peace, all that kind of stuff. So they actually, and they followed through with that outside for that rally of however many people there were, thousands, but they made an announcement that said, hey, this is what they're doing inside, go ahead, go inside, go and listen to them, that kind of stuff, etc. And but be peaceful.
At what time did they do that? Do you know? Did you hear them?
No, I wasn't outside. I was told by people that were outside that heard it that they did do that, but I didn't go outside because I was helping manage the rally inside.
Yeah, same. I didn't
go outside and listen to that one at all, So the only time I went outside into the crowd was when we were trying to find one of our speakers that, anyways, that was getting caught up in the crowd.
And we did have one or two. Well, I guess I don't know what happened at one time where TC kind of flagged me over and said, hey, come here, stand right here. I think he was anticipating or maybe seen something. because I really didn't see anything other than another time some guy came through and TC kind of walked with him and walked him away. And then another time when there was a dude walking around and he stuck his head in between the pillars and yelled something that I couldn't even understand. And then he walked right by me and his face was super red as after he did it. And then it was like, grow up, dude. Where are you getting, what kind of satisfaction are you getting by running and someone speaking from their heart? Yeah, I don't remember exactly who was talking either, but I was standing behind him and the guy walked up beside and just yelled something. And then when he came back this way, he was total flush. And it was like, grow up, dude. Is it really worth it? But whatever. I mean, some
Yeah.
folks,
Some people like their war.
I mean, that's what we were there for, to speak our mind too, right? But I guess appropriately, I think, and I really do wish more people would come in and listen to our speeches. But
Well, and we did. So when I learned how many people they were anticipating showing up, because when I got in touch with the organizer from the other rally, he told me that they were expecting between 10 and 20,000 people. And I was just like, in your mind, how do you visualize 20,000 people, And so I was
that
like,
area is real vast.
what's that?
It's vast and wide open, like you said, too. So
Yeah. Well, and I also was like, well, we have that crowd is obviously a crowd that wants to be politically active, right? That's why they're here. And so that night before, I wrote up something on an 8.5 by 11, sheet of paper, and I made 200 copies of it. And I didn't come home with any of them. All of those got passed out.
Ryan did really well with that. Him and I, and after we were all done, and that right after we were done, it was pretty much they were done. And so
and
we
Charlie too, because he was standing at the front door, and every time somebody walked in, he was like, "Hey, have you heard of?" And he was doing great. It was amazing.
That's great. Those were, and I was handing them out with a few folks. Like, I think they were looking at me like I was too dressed up, like I was suspicious because I was walking out of there.
Mm-hmm.
But Ryan was really associating well. And when we were hanging out in the parking lot, I was waiting for everything to clear out. We had a few good conversations with a few good people. So I think the overlap of the anti-war sentiment with that crowd and our crowd was definitely there. That's why I was really hoping to see some more participation on the inside. But those flyers, great job getting those out. That was really good, folks.
Well, I was trying to wrap my mind around how can we capitalize on this opportunity, and what sat down after, I'd be like, what I didn't want to sit down and be like, oh, I wish I had done that, So what I wish I had done, I wish I'd printed off 400 of them, not just 200, because I think we could have passed them all out.
Well, and definitely the one that Nick had made, it looks really nice and it was good, but the top person on there was Pete Hegseth. 99% of the people out there would have saw that and probably F this. And that would have been that still is valuable literature for a different crowd. You know what I mean? And I mean, I guess he made all that before they started doing all kinds of other dumb shit over there. This administration, and Pete Hegseth did make that quote, said he did defend or did support and defend the Guard, and same with Tulsi. But let's see what they're up to right now. I actually haven't heard much since that whole "What's Up" scandal or whatever, WhatsApp or Signal or whatever.
Well, both of them, Pete Hegseth, he's a veteran, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. And Tulsi Gabbard, she's still serving, I think.
You know what? I keep hearing that, but I don't know.
I think she is. So, I mean, operational security is kind of a basic thing. So they should have known better.
Definitely. That's why I feel like that shit was a setup too. Was
Probably
more
manufactured.
totally. It's the more you realize it's all just I don't even know what cliche I want to say about it. Smoke and mirrors, whatever. It's all just an illusion, and we're eating it all up.
Well, some people are. The media is. I don't know. At this point in time, I'm just so. I don't know what's the right word. Like, just you when you've gone through it so many times, it just you become desensitized.
Desensitized. Yeah, that was the word. I was brain farting it too. It's been happening to me a lot lately.
That's what happens
Oh
when you
man.
get old.
No, it's long COVID, Rebecca. It's probably we're dealing with long COVID.
Oh, maybe should have gotten your vaccine.
Oh man. Well, do we want to chat about anything else? We got anything upcoming? So actually, I'd like to, since we kind of had some time. So last week I had a appointment. I don't remember if I've talked about it any, but my wife and I are trying to adopt a baby, and the more I can talk about it, the better, right? So if you ever anybody knows a woman that um, is looking to give her baby up for adoption, go to Adoption MN, and they'll take good care of you and say, "Hey, I know this guy." So, however else you want to do it, but that's how the process is. Like, there's no, um, there is a picking mechanism, but it's very interesting. So, if anybody knows anybody, that's pretty much all I really want to put out is like, if you know anybody, let her give it a shot at Adoption MN.
Very cool.
So is that crazy
Well,
Corman? That's someone we know, right? That was at the rally that you mentioned earlier.
yeah,
Okay.
and I did want to talk about something else, but I don't think we have time for it this evening. So maybe we'll discuss it next week. But it was about
Yeah.
the soldier that went to prison and when he was served his time, got out of prison, now he's being deported. And I do want to talk about that, but I'll get all that information together and talk about that next week because that story is a little a little closer to me
That's
because
almost,
yeah, I served in we were in the same unit.
yeah.
And so it brings up an interesting complexities, I think, when it comes to immigration, military service, and you know um, felons. I guess he'd technically be considered a felon. So, but
Yeah.
it's an
Only
interesting story. So
I want to look more into it, right? I've read your story on it. I didn't read the was there an article also that you shared about it?
yeah, there were several articles. I mean, you can just Google his name, and there's tons of
Yeah.
articles that'll come up. But he, yeah, mine. Well, we can talk about this next week. But
All right,
homework
let's
is that there's so there's that guy, but part of it also is that when we served and where we served in Iraq was just so awful, I guess is the best word, that to the degree of which it caught Frontline did an entire episode just on this guy's company and unit because of all the problems that it wasn't just him. Like this wasn't just this. He's getting attention because of what happened because his immigration was never finished, but that he was not the only person that kind of just lost his mind after Iraq and two deployments back to back, both to very, very challenging areas in key points where like the height of conflict and loss was just at its peak, and that was when we served and in those areas, specifically. And so anyways, it brings up interesting complexities when it talks about immigration and service because you don't automatically get military you don't automatically become an American citizen just because you serve in the military.
yeah. No,
So,
that's an interesting thing that a lot of folks might not know, but
mhm.
there's a lot of what do they call it, naturalization or something ceremonies on board ships, for lots of sailors that come in that are not citizens.
Yeah, well, and people use serving in the military as a path to citizenship, but it's not a guarantee.
Not a guarantee. Yeah, that's for sure. That's the other part. It's not guaranteed that it happens. Similar to like marrying someone or whatnot, you know what I mean? That's not necessarily a guarantee either. Like the
No,
spouse still has to go through lots of stuff.
right. And because of where we were stationed, can you read the comments? The
Yeah, the Twitch. I think that's a Twitch
like,
thing.
dude, if you don't like it, move on.
Yeah.
You're the one that's wasting your time here. So, who's the real joke? But anyways, I knew people that were in the army. We were in the same unit because we were stationed in South Korea for a little bit too. And so, a lot of dudes come home with Korean or Filipino wives, right?
Yeah.
And I knew of a couple of people whose wives had to go back to their originating country because the immigration system was just not working in their favor, even though they were married. And that the soldier was still in active duty service, and so they had to. Their wife was being basically forced back in Korea or wherever it is. So they came from. So that's an injustice of the system, and it's also an example of how broken it is. And so it doesn't have to be that way. It's just another one of those manufactured things.
Yeah. Now there's a thing where I have empathy for all these folks that get caught up in all this bullshit that it is when it's someone trying to score political points. Similar to this current thing, Enjoyer, like, oh, all the comments disappeared from that person.
I just blocked him.
Oh, good. So, anyways, it's when it's the result of someone trying to play politics, and it's caught up in the nuance, right? Because this guy did serve and did all this, and really, if you're gonna cut a line and say, well, if you're on this side and you committed this much morality that was wrong, well, then you must go this way. But if you have not committed that much morality that is wrong, you can stay and come this way. It's like, well, who draws that effing line? And then I don't know, stuff happens like this. And so it's a real tough one to really be who's the arbiter of that stuff. And I think for sure this kind of thing should not have happened to someone like that. But then all the folks that it did happen to, the stories are coming out. Everybody's got their individual stories that of how this impacted them or their family or their friends.
Yep.
It's going to be interesting, but I think it's going to, unless we keep talking about it, it's definitely going to kind of just blow over to the next current thing enjoyer, right? Because the next current thing is going to pop up, and then we're not going to talk about it anymore. And then those folks are still going to be sitting in those effing prisons, or they're still going to be flying those planes to the prisons. They're still going to be doing that shit. That's the thing, is that the stuff doesn't really stop.
Right. Well, we are probably at the end of our time today. So, if you're interested in joining the party, lpmn.org, donate membership, find out events of what's going on. There's an events tab. And you want to get in touch with other flat earthers. No, I'm just kidding.
We're the flat earthers of the politics. That's what the comment.
Yeah, I'm just kidding. We're not flat earthers. At least I'm not. I don't. Flat earther? Yes, no.
No.
Okay, weird. It's almost like people think they know what they know, but they don't actually know, and they're just spewing ignorance. So good job. So we'll be back next week, next Wednesday, same place, same time.
Contact your Minnesota House or Senator and tell them that you want to support Defend the Guard legislation.
Yep. And
best
then
we can do is get everybody to call their folks, and the more they hear about it, then when they hear it from us, they're gonna be like, "Oh, I do. Somebody else I do know in my district said this to me too." So, because we're trying to really get to each one of them and let them know, but the session ends soon, so we're limited on that time as well. So
yeah, but there's next year.
yep.
And a whole summer of strategizing and getting together, and making sure that we know we're getting organized. We do have some training that'll be up on the website soon. The training is going to be in Minnesota, June 7th in Roseville. So if you're interested in activism training, it'll be a 9 to 5, $50 for a ticket. It's not on the website yet, but it will be soon. So, just get in touch, info@lpmn.org if you have any questions, and see you guys next week.
Thank you. Night.